Hey, thanks for tuning in. My name is Zach from Brutal Research and Development, and today we're going to be talking about all things Brutal M-360, our power and video slip ring upgrade for everybody's favorite gimbal, the MoVI XL. And I want to start by talking about what is Brutal R&D. If we haven't met via Brutal before, you might know me as one of the co-founders of Crane, the world's first manufacturer of universal remote arms or camera car systems. So Brutal R&D is kind of my experimental, fun side project where I can focus on areas that might not fit totally within what Crane is all about, but still are things that are interesting to me or annoying to me that I think should be different. Which leads me to the M360. I've been using the MoVI XL since 2018, primarily in the tracking vehicle or camera car application. And it's an amazing tool that has obviously revolutionized the way most cinematographers are using larger stabilized camera systems. But for our application, there were things that really frustrated me. Specifically, the inability to run a remote power source or hardwired video without losing the ability to do 360-degree infinite pan without tangling cables. So, truth be told, I thought that at some point someone was going to solve this problem and I wouldn't have to do it. But sometime in the summer of 2022, we were coming home from a track shoot with Crane Hyper, and at some point in the day we had tangled up the cables because we were tracking stuff all over the place, and I said enough is enough. I'm gonna create a solution for this, and I don't care if someone else comes out with it at the same time. I just need one. So I spent a whole weekend, probably didn't sleep very much, and created the M360 slip ring. And the whole premise here is a no compromises I/O solution for power and video. So the ability to run a remote power source for your MoVI XL and also run hardwired 3G SDI video through the pan axis, neither of which compromising the ability to 360-degree infinitely pan the gimbal. If you are a stabilized head user, you probably have some experience with the Ronin 2, and many people that use the Ronin 2 enjoy this luxury of having that 3G SDI and power slip ring through the Ronin 2 because they get to get on the wheels or the joysticks and pan around and never have to think about cables. All of a sudden, you get on the sticks for a MoVI XL, and all of a sudden it's something that you're thinking about. So for me, in arm car work, I like to really just be focused on the task at hand. I don't want to be thinking about how much battery I have left, if I need to untangle cables, or dealing with wireless transmission if I don't have to. So the M360 solves all of that. And the whole concept here is a low-profile module that integrates into the XL very quickly and easily and allows for all of those things. So we touched on it a little bit, but why M360? If you're a MoVI XL user, why would you consider using a system like this? And for me, it really boils down to three things. The first of which is power. Specifically, power life, or the duration of power that I have before I have to worry about changing out batteries. When FreeFly was developing the MoVI XL, they obviously had to build a power solution that was going to be powering the system for a long enough period of time. And they landed on 2 LiPo batteries, just like with the MoVI Pro, that sit on either side of the pan motor, both totaling about 20 amp hours, and they say that that will power the gimbal and accessories for about 4 hours. But as cameras get more power hungry, like the Mini LF or the Alexa 35, drawing upwards of hundreds of watts continuously, that 4 hours starts to shrink pretty quickly, and all of a sudden we're only looking at a couple hours of runtime before we have to do power changeouts if we're powering everything off of those LiPo batteries. And for me, that's not something that I want to have to think about. So for me, the first step is, well, just get a massive battery. So as a part of the M360 ecosystem here, I've also created what I call the all-day battery, which is a 60 amp hour. So this battery is 6 times the size of a single MoVI XL battery. So this equals about 3 full sets of battery changes from FreeFly. And we call this the all-day battery because you can pretty much power everything you could possibly mount to the gimbal and more, and run the gimbal for all day and never be worried about battery capacity, which is exactly what I want when I'm running an ARM car on set for all day. I have this battery in the trunk, safely stowed away. This is non-combustible chemistry, so it's not like it's going to explode like a LiPo, so that's great. Safe for having inside of a vehicle. And I can, again, turn on the gimbal and run it all day and not have to worry about it. So that, for me, is the biggest, most important reason, is having pretty much unlimited within a full day runtime on the gimbal. And again, not worrying about running a cable through the pan motor and spinning around and tangling up that cable. So the first one, again, is power, or power capacity. The second biggest reason for me to own the M360 is payload capacity. In every single application that you're using the XL, it's going to be hanging or mounted to something. That might be a stationary crane, a Techno, or a Scorpio crane. In our case, an ARM car, a black arm, something that has a finite amount of payload capacity. And one thing that frustrates me is just the size of the batteries that are mounted to the XL. And being able to remotely locate those, not on the payload side of whatever apparatus I'm mounting the XL to, allows me to take whatever weight I'm saving and devote it to camera, lens, and more valuable accessories that are actually adding to the creative freedom that I have as a cinematographer. So getting rid of that sort of dead weight and getting it located elsewhere is really important. In our world of camera cars, every pound that we save in payload results in almost a 3-pound savings in the counterweight. So it's actually a net savings of almost 4 pounds, again, for every pound that we save. So when we're talking about, 7 pounds of batteries, 7 times 3, I mean, that's almost 25 pounds all up weight of the system that we're shaving off. And when we're talking about the physics of camera cars, every gram that we save is important. So, second big reason is payload capacity. The third is reliability. This really comes down to how you're handling video transmission on your set. Now, we all know that there's a hole through the XL pan motor, and you can run an SDI cable through there. And in some applications, that works fine. But again, in our application, for me and what I want to be doing and what I want to be focusing on when I'm working on set is not thinking about tangling up cables, especially an SDI cable next to a high current 24-volt line. You have an inexperienced operator that gets in there, and you're kind of asking for permanent equipment damage, in my opinion. So having the ability to run hardwired, reliable video, not having to worry about the volatility of a wireless transmitter is huge for us. So for me, the 3 big reasons for getting the M360 are power life, payload capacity, and reliability. So now that we've talked about the reasons why to consider the M360 for your work, let's actually talk about what this thing is and what's on it. So on the very top, you're going to notice a very familiar bolt pattern. This is the exact same bolt pattern that you're going to find on the top of the MoVI XL. And on my journey or quest to make sure that this was the most streamlined and easy to integrate with all the accessories that I had already developed, this was an easy choice to make sure that everything that I already had mounted up directly to the top of the M360. So again, on top of this, you're going to find the exact same bolt pattern that exists on top of the MoVI XL. And on the front here, you have a familiar SDI port, and that's where your video is going to be coming out to go down to your monitoring solution of your choice. This is a fuse, so there actually is circuit protection inside the M360 itself to make sure that there's not an overcurrent event, like a short circuit or something, that would actually damage the core of the slip ring. So you have a really common 40 amp fuse that you could find at any auto parts store. So in the event that that was something that blew, you could change that out really quickly. And then of course, right next to it, we have the power input, and that's just going to be your standard XT90. Now, one of the most common first questions that I get from someone looking at the M360 is, hey, the XL has 2 XT90s. Why does the M360 only have 1 XT90 power input? Well, the answer is, again, when Freefly was developing the XL, they had to take that total 20 amp hours of capacity in order to get that 4 hours of runtime and put it somewhere on the gimbal. And so what they did was, just like with the MoVI Pro, they split the battery capacity in half and put it on either side of the pan motor. And so by doing that, they obviously had to have 2 battery input cables. But those 2 XT90s that are on board the MoVI XL, which I'll just show you right here, these 2 XT90s are actually connected to the exact same terminal input on the XL. So again, although there's 2 XT90s, they're actually just being split off of the same terminal input on the MoVI XL. So when you plug this one XT90 into one of the XT90s on the XL, you're not like getting half the power or anything like that. Those 2 connectors are really just by virtue of having 2 batteries on board from FreeFly, needing those 2 connectors. Now, underneath this main housing, you have the actual slip ring body, and this is a 100% bespoke slip ring design that I developed with one of our vendors that we use at Motocrane to develop our slip rings for those applications. And this is a pretty cool, it's actually a 24 channel. Each channel is rated for about 3 amps to give us about 30 amps of continuous power through this very, very small, high density slip ring core. And again, in the center of that is a coaxial 3G connection as well. And then of course at the very bottom of the slip ring core is the single XT90 power input, as well as a micro BNC, or it's called a high density BNC connector. And this is basically just a mini SDI. And by using the smaller class of cable, we can really slim everything down to make sure there's no snags. So before we get the M360 mounted up to our XL here, let's actually go through the remainder of what's included in the kit. So also included is a 6-foot micro BNC to standard BNC cable, and this allows you to run or extend that micro BNC feed down the frame of the gimbal into the camera area here. And again, this is long enough where you can actually run it through the arm, so it's nice and tidy, so that you're not actually seeing any kind of bundled or dangled cables from the M360. Of course, there's hardware included. There's also a support bracket and cable guard, which get mounted to the bottom side here to make sure that the bottom of the slip ring is supported. We also include a parallel XT90 adapter, and this allows you to use your 2 existing LiPo batteries with a single XT90 extension cable running into the M360. So if you're worried like, hey, you know, I still want to use my 2 LiPo batteries, don't worry, we include the cable to do that. So no compromises on your existing runtime if you're using FreeFly's LiPo batteries or the Ignite Digi TB50 adapters. Those plug right into the included parallel cable. We also include this single bolt for using the Motocrane QR eliminator. If you're using that accessory, you know what this is for. If you're not using that accessory, don't worry about it. We also include this right angle micro BNC adapter in the event that you don't want to use this extension and you instead want to use another micro BNC going right down into the camera volume build area there. So we've gone through what's included with the Brutal M360 kit. Let's actually get into mounting one of these things to the MoVI XL. So the first thing I'm going to do is just drop the XT90 and the micro BNC down through the hollow center of the MoVI XL pan motor. And I'm going to open up my hardware bag, and included are 3 3/8 bolts, which are going to mount my M360 to the XL pan motor. Just going to run each of these in. Awesome. Now, in order to show you what I'm going to be doing on the bottom side of the XL, I'm going to tip it onto its back and kind of move the camera cage around so you can get a better shot at the bottom. All right, so hopefully you have a better shot here and a better view of what I'm doing underneath at the bottom of the pan motor. What I'm going to do is there's actually 2 little M3 fasteners on the bottom of the pan motor that I'm going to remove, and we're going to kind of commandeer those threaded holes for adding the support bracket. So I pulled those M3s, and I'm going to open up this bag that says support bracket and cable guard. Now these get shipped kind of as a piece put together. This is the support bracket here, and this is the cable guard. The first part that we're going to install is the support bracket, and we're going to use the remaining 2 M3 fasteners that were in that hardware bag. So I'm going to first put the XT90 and the micro BNC through the center of the support bracket, and I'm just going to slide it up until it goes over the bottom of the slip ring that I just ran through the pan motor. And then using the supplied M3 screws that are just a little bit longer than the ones we took out from the MoVI XL, we're going to run those into the same holes that we just took them out of. So now that I have my support bracket installed and around the slip ring, I'm going to take the cable guard here, which is an aluminum part that prevents the cables from getting smashed into during operation of the gimbal and gives them a nice bend radius towards the back for safer cable routing. And there's a very thin section that actually slides right over the bottom of the slip ring and right into the margin between it and the support bracket. So you can see I'm just going to kind of place that right over the cables, and it will slide right in between. And again, that's going to give us a nice bend radius for those cables. And then I use that same tool that I was just using and tighten down the support bracket around the cable guard. And that just cinches everything up together, nice and secure. So I now have my micro BNC and my XT90, and I can plug in my XT90 to either one of the XT90s on board the MoVI XL. And now what we're going to do is take that included micro BNC to standard BNC extension and route it through the gimbal to give us that standard BNC connector type that we want in the camera build area. So again, this included 6-foot extension cable is going to run from the M360 here, and it's kind of dealer's choice, but I run it down the frame of the gimbal, through the roll motors, and then into the camera volume area here. I like to do that because I like my builds to be very clean and very tidy. I don't like any excess cables kind of showing or flapping around. So this kind of minimizes the chance or the likelihood of any kind of cable snags, and it also just ends up looking a lot cleaner. So to make it easier to visualize, I'm going to take off this carbon fiber cover on the roll arm of the MoVI XL. If you don't want to route the extension cable through the gimbal, you certainly don't have to, in which case you wouldn't have to do this step. I'm doing it because I like it. So I've removed the carbon fiber cover there. I'm just going to set that aside. And you can kind of see in the connector area here, I should say the cable area here, where the BNC is going to be coming through the roll motor and then going this way, which I'm going to route it through this carbon fiber arm and then into the camera build area there. So here's my extension cable. I'm going to take the BNC side, the standard BNC side, push it through the back of the roll motor here, which is hollow, and right in to this area here. And I can kind of rough out the amount of cable that I'm going to use. I'm going to be able to adjust that total length as I go here. Now I'm just going to route it through the roll arm this way. Before I continue, I'm going to spin the gimbal around so you can kind of see what I'm doing better. So I've just loosely mapped out how much of this length of the cable that I'm going to need to get into my camera area here. I'm going to pull this foam plug and push this cable down this roll arm. And I'm going to hit the next foam plug that I have here. I'm going to pull that as well and keep pushing it through. And voila. I have my standard BNC with enough length here to work in this area. And I'm just going to kind of see if I have too much or too little slack on this end here. And it looks like I have quite a bit. I'm going to pull a little bit away from that. Just an inch or so. Cool. And then just the opposite. I'm going to put my foam plug in here at the front of this side of the roll arm here. And then the foam plug here at the back. Now I'm going to spin it back around so we can see what I'm doing on the other side. I like to take this BNC and just kind of pigtail it here so it doesn't get caught on anything. And then I'm going to add this cover back on that I had removed. Awesome. So now all that's remaining is just running my micro BNC up through the frame of the gimbal and just making sure that it is secured. I'm going to turn this 90 degrees so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm just going to be running this up this carbon fiber tube here and connecting it to the M360. And again, this part's dealer's choice. This is just going to kind of fall in line with how you like to run and manage your cables on your gimbal. Cut the excess off your cable ties, making sure you don't cut anything else important while you're doing it. And with that, you are all set up to run the M360. So the next steps here are going to actually be plugging it into a power source. In this case, we're going to be running our Brutal all-day battery. And so I'm going to spin it around here and show you how to plug that in and turn the system on. So depending on your application, you're going to want different lengths XT90 extension cables. This here is just a standard 10 foot. We also have 15 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet, and we can do custom sizes as well. And that length is really just determined by how far away you want your power source to be from the XL itself, often dictated by the length of a crane or length of an arm, or again, if you're just remote operating, how far away you're going to be as an operator. So this process is really simple. I'm just going to take the female side of the XT90 here and plug it right in. And again, in this application or in this instance, we're going to be using our Brutal all-day battery. So that we're plugged in there, the process is the same. We just press our on button and the XL is going to boot up. In this case, it's showing 100%, which it probably would all day if we're using the all-day battery. And we'd be ready to shoot. I'm going to show you also how to use your standard LiPo batteries in place of the all-day battery. So if you're already invested in a bunch of LiPo batteries from FreeFly, you don't have to worry about migrating over to a new power supply. If these are working for you and that's what you want to use, that's fantastic. You don't have to use any power source that you don't want to. Again, the M360 is about working into any existing workflows and making them better, not forcing any migration into a new power source. So for using two LiPo batteries from FreeFly, it's really simple. You're just going to take the parallel adapter cable that's included with the M360 and go ahead and just plug in each of the LiPo batteries to the parallel adapter and plug that right into your XT90 extension cable. And then you can go ahead and power up the gimbal. I want to also talk about the various mounting options that are available when using the M360, and it's pretty simple. Anything that you're currently doing with the MoVI XL, you can do with the M360. So if you are a user of the FreeFly quick release system, you can just drop that right on and screw it into the existing M6 holes that you would normally do. So I'm just going to keep moving here and use different mounting options. I'm not going to put all 6 of those M6s in. The same thing would go if you were using the FreeFly male Mitchell mount. This, of course, can get mounted to the other side of the quick release that we were just using. But again, this can just get dropped in the exact same way. But this is the exact same story there. So if you are using a male or female Mitchell-based system, that can also get added very easily. If you're using your MoVI XL on a moto crane arm, I also want to talk about mounting it to a very popular anti-vibration mount, the Flow Sydney tranquilizer. So here I have a standard Flow Sydney tranquilizer with a full stack of passive plates, and I'm just going to turn it upside down. And this is the Moto Crane QR eliminator. Before I mount this to the bottom of the tranquilizer like I normally would, I'm going to actually push one of these 3/8 bolts out. And what I'm going to do is take that one bolt that I'd mentioned earlier, which says, for use with Moto Crane QR eliminator only. Can't mess that up. And I'm going to take that bolt and put it in place of the one that I just removed. Taking that O-ring retainer and just running it down to make sure that it doesn't fall out. So now that I have that in place, I can install my QR eliminator with the 4 M6 bolts into the bottom of the tranquilizer. It's going to look something like this. And before I go up and mount it to the M360, I'm going to pull one of the 3/8 bolts that are currently installed in the M360. And the reason I do this is because that longer bolt is actually going to pass through the M360 and mount all the way into the actual XL pan motor, bypassing the M360 altogether and sandwiching it in place. So it makes for a more secure connection. So again, I'm just going to take this and I'm going to run that longer bolt down. Grab my hex key here and run that down into the XL. Run my other 3/8 bolt in. Good. And then my 2 M6s. This keeps everything very streamlined. You would have the tranquilizer mounted directly to the end of an arm or a black arm, and again, you don't have a bunch of extra weight just in sort of non-value add mounting accessories. This is a really nice tight mounting package where you don't have a bunch of extra weight, extra points of failure, extra points of slipping. Everything's bolted together. There's really very little room for error, and again, it's a very solid connection. Well, if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your interest in the M360 power and video slipring upgrade for the MoVI XL. As always, if you have questions about the system, the kit, or if it's right for you in your application, make sure you get in touch. Again, thanks for watching.